a developer must meet specific deadlines in order to take advantage of this tool. The planning manager of Solvang specifically warned the Wildwood developer of the deadline, saying, you have until August 1st, 2024 to submit all requested materials for your preliminary application to have any force and effect. Two of the many submissions requested were a title report of the easement properties to ensure that the underlying property owners had notice of the application, and a traffic study specific to the development. Neither the title report or the traffic study have been submitted by August 1st, 2024. It's important to note that the code specifically uses the words shall submit, not may submit or should submit. Thus, the requests by the planning manager were mandatory, not at the discretion of the developer to choose what or when he would submit. Likewise, the code uses the words the preliminary application shall expire when setting out the penalty for a developer who chooses not to abide by the 90-day rule. Thus, if the developer at Wildwood has for any reason missed the August 1st, 2024 deadline, the Wildwood preliminary application has expired and no longer has force and effect. Since the full application was filed after the housing element of Solvang was adopted and certified, it can no longer be processed as a builder's remedy application. Collectively, you as council and individually as council members have a duty, along with the staff you supervise, to follow the law. That duty will be violated if you or your staff ignore and fail to follow the clear directive of California Code 65941.1-D-2, which requires Solvang to now declare the Wildwood preliminary application expired and of no force and effect. If you follow the law, Solvang and the developer can proceed with a modified application that conforms to the general plan that this council so painstakingly adopted. Hopefully, Solvang and the developer can provide some of the affordable housing the plan calls for, and which we all support. If the applicant chooses to sue because you follow the letter of the law, don't worry about defeat. The law and the public are on your side. If you do not promptly follow the clear mandate of the state code and violate the law, you will sadly and at great cost be requiring the very citizens
Yes, Mayor Infante and City Council. My name is David Goldstein. I am not a resident of Solvang. I live in the hinterlands of San Ynez, but I am here on behalf of the Friends of the Library of the San Ynez Valley, of which your library, the Solvang Library, is part of. It's our main concern. I am kind of the forerunner or whatever of the rest of our board members who will show up from week to week, from meeting to meeting, and update you on the goings-on at the library. So this is just the introduction to the Solvang Library's, I shouldn't say plight, but its needs and what it has to offer for the city of Solvang. The Friends of the Library is a group that was formed to support the library and has supported them over many years, providing funds for programs that they do at the library and equipment that they need at the library and whatever else might be needed. Right now is kind of a slow period in our year. We have coming up this month and next month story times for the little kids. We have book groups that meet at the library, and we have and we're hosting events with the San Ynez Valley Natural History Society at our facility. We have one coming up concerning mammals on the beach, which I thought I had a little clip here for, but I don't. But will be coming up later this month and be a presentation by I believe a zoologist she is, on research that she's done for mammals on the beach. Our current issues that you'll hear about over the next few months are we are in desperate need of a larger library based on a study done in 2006, 2008. We need a facility to serve our population of 3 times what we have, and we are in desperate need of it. We are investigating right now also separation, or having us separate. As you know, we're part of the Goleta Valley Library System, and we are looking into trying to separate from that, from Goleta Library, and become our own library.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dennis Beebe, Solvang. I'd like to congratulate all those on the dais who won their respective elections, especially Mayor-elect Brown, who ran a competitive campaign. I know sometimes you think that you run a complaint department, but that's not my purpose tonight, even though I agree with everything Steve Martin said. I want to compliment city staff on 2 events that occurred on Saturday and yesterday. That was the Salute to Veterans on Saturday and the Veterans Day yesterday. Super events. And Salute to Veterans was the first time Solvang has ever hosted that one. In fact, a few years ago, members of the council were very disappointed that they choose to continue in Santa Ynez. The reason being, they had a $15,000 estimate of what it was going to cost them to run their event in Solvang. They didn't feel very welcome. Well, they came back to Solvang. They eliminated the parade, saved most of that money, and were welcomed by staff, particularly Parks and Rec, but also with support from Public Works. They had a super successful event, and they're coming back next year. I'd like Randy to put 8 November 2025 on his advanced calendar, because Salute to Veterans is coming back a year from now. So thank you, Parks and Rec and Public Works. Veterans Day was equally successful. I think we had a record crowd. I mean, it was standing room only in the hall, and we had reserved parking in front at a military vehicle display. It was also a super successful event, and neither one of these events would have been successful unless enabled by your dedicated staff, Parks and Rec, Public Works. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of the council. Al Cortese of Solvang. At many council meetings, I've reiterated the position of the attorney for the co-owners of the common property. The developer of Site C wants to take for what we like to call Deadwood Lane. And that is that the city staff should not be processing the application under the builder's remedy law, because the application is void and of no effect and did not vest any rights in the developer. Our position was clearly stated in our council's letter of um, March 22, 24, and in a follow-up email dated April 1 to the mayor, planning manager, and city manager, CCing the developer and the city attorney. After many months of asking the same question, we finally received what I would respectfully characterize as a non-response at the council meeting on September 23. That non-response mischaracterized our position as a request for a public hearing that could not be conducted until the application was complete. That is not our position. Our position is that the preliminary application is defective, void, and did not vest any rights in the developer for failure to secure the consent to submit the application and signatures thereon of all the owners of the common property underlying the easement, and therefore that the city should not further process the builder's remedy project application. Putting off dealing with that issue directly could prejudice our legal position and invites litigation. And it is unfair to the developer who is spending significant time and money on a potentially void application. So tonight, I specifically request that the council direct staff to respond in writing to our council within the week, setting out the reasons supporting their position that the application is not void and must continue to be processed. Thank you.
Yes, I'm ready. Are you seeing the PowerPoint presentation? Good evening, Mayor Infante and council members. I'm Matt Griffin. I'm the engineering manager for County Flood Control. You may have heard that the FEMA special flood hazard maps are being revised. And so this is going to be a short presentation to update you on that process. And at the end, I will briefly touch on some potential lake fire associated flooding impacts. Next slide, please. So I'll start by providing some general background on FEMA's National Floodplain Insurance Program, or NFIP for short. Flooding is the most costly natural disaster in the United States. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that second place is not even close. In 1968, the federal government passed the National Flood Insurance Act because prior to that, flood insurance was either prohibitively expensive or simply not available in the private insurance market. And so the National Flood Insurance Act had two goals. One was reducing future flood damage by mapping flood hazards and development and implementation of floodplain management standards, and protecting private property owners by closing the insurance gap. Local government chooses to participate in the NFIP. So the county has chosen to participate, and County Flood Control is the floodplain manager for unincorporated portions of the county. The city of Solvang independently has chosen to participate in the NFIP, and the city itself is its floodplain manager. So I just want to emphasize that the development of these special flood hazard area maps and their updating is a FEMA process. It is not a county flood control driven effort. Next slide, please. So the area areas in yellow show the areas of where the maps are changing. On the south coast, it includes the city of Carpinteria, the city of Santa Barbara, and of course, Montecito. In the San Ynez Valley, it includes the city of Buellton, the city of Solvang, some tribal areas, and of course, some unincorporated areas also. The revised mapping has been released and is referred to as preliminary mapping. Next slide, please. So you may ask, why are the maps changing and why is this important? Flood hazards change over time. Weather patterns and erosion, new development can impact flooding. Of course, in Montecito, the landscape there changed drastically with the 2018 debris flow. Also, there is improved technology and modeling techniques that will create updated flood maps that provide a more accurate picture of the property's flood risk. Next slide, please. So FEMA started the update process back in 2018. It takes them a very long time to get these things done. The preliminary maps were released in March of this year. And I apologize for my speech. I'm having a flare-up for a condition I have. So bear with me here. I'll get through this. The maps were released in March of this year, and there was a start of a formal appeals period in September of this year. That appeals period is 90 days long, so it will end in December 18th of this year. And FEMA only accepts appeals based on technical issues. Next slide, please. Next slide. I'm sorry. There's a couple. Yeah, this one. This is a busy figure. I won't get too much into details. The special flood hazard areas are based on the 100-year flood event. There's a special area of the map called the floodway. The floodway is very restrictive for development. Outside of the floodway, development is possible. Typically, that requires building finished floor elevations to be built above the water surface elevation of the 100-year flood event. Next slide, please. So within the city, there are two creeks being remapped. One is the water course that runs through Hans Christian Park, and the other is Alisal Creek, south of the San Ynez River. And here you see, these images might be hard to read, but on the left is the current mapping, on the right is the future mapping. Next slide, please. So County Flood Control has a webpage dedicated to this process. It includes frequently asked questions, and it also includes an interactive map where people can focus in on a particular area and slide back and forth, showing the two maps, the current mapping and the preliminary mapping. You can compare the difference between the two. And if you have questions that cannot be answered by this website, you're welcome to contact us at County Flood Control. If you have questions particular to the city of Solvang, I would refer you to city staff for that. Next slide, please. This is Alamo Pentago Creek. I'm transitioning now to the lake fire. Alamo Pentago Creek watershed is within the lake fire berm scar. This picture is from 1998. It's the flood of record on Alamo Pentago Creek. And as many of you know, this intersection also flooded in 2023. Because of the lake fire, we can expect increased flood flows and debris in Alamo Pentago Creek with less rainfall than normal. So people need to be aware and take precautions in that case. Next slide, please. County Flood Control is undertaking 3 emergency protective measure projects. We are building 2 debris racks, one near Midland School and one near Chamberlain Ranch. And we are building a temporary flood barrier near Nielsen Market, down near Highway 246 and Alamo Pentago. Next slide, please. The county does provide sandbags. Our typical sandbag location is in Buellton, Fire Station 31. A temporary location for that this year is 761 McMurray Road. And because of the lake fire, there's a second sandbag station located at Sunnyfield Park. Those sandbags will be available while supplies last. So again, I apologize for my voice. I know most of what I said is probably not understandable. Sometimes these things happen. With that, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? I have a couple. First off, I was looking at your slide that shows the maps of the 2 areas. And of course, I've got my computer, and I can't tell, even if I blow it up, I can't see any real change between the 2.
Yeah, so not all water courses are changing. As I mentioned, if you look at Alisal Creek south of the river, you can see a difference there.
Thank you. I did not notice that. Yes, I do see that.
And if you look at the water course that runs through the Hans Christian open space, you can see some new mapping on the right-hand side. Let me look at my version of the PowerPoint. It is on there. It's hard to see, but there is a difference. Like I said, the interactive map is available on our county website, and you can zoom in on these areas a little more, a little more directly, and you should be able to then slide back and forth to visualize the difference between the 2 maps.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. Their interactive map is pretty cool. You can slide it and it shows one to the other. We did review the, a cursory review of the new mapping, and it's mainly more accurate mapping that's being done for these areas. There's not a whole lot of there's no new large areas that are now in a flood zone that weren't before, type of thing. So nothing's really changing at this point. It's more there's more accurate mapping that's being done by FEMA.
One other thing I was going to point out, you've got a picture of Alamo Pentago and 246 where it's flooded.
Yes.
From my non-expert opinion, the predominant reason for that was that creek had a lot of chopped up or fallen off limbs and wood, and they got stuck underneath the bridge, and it wouldn't allow the water
Yes. In 2023 particularly, the bridge clogged and that caused most of the overflow. Roger is also involved in the Caltrans effort to rebuild that bridge at Highway 246. Um, they're making some improvements, but there are some physical constraints there that make it difficult to raise the bridge or to make it wider. Um, it just physically it makes the intersection down Muvitado Road and Highway 246 intersection not work if you raise the road profile. So there will be some improvements to that bridge, but it won't be what everyone is looking for, unfortunately. And as I mentioned, because of the burn scar, there will be increased runoff that flows down Alamo Pintado Creek, and there will be more debris than normal. So the risk is certainly still there this coming winter to have a plugged bridge and increased flows that would impact, that neighborhood and intersection.
I was going to mention that both Matt and myself have been in on the conversations with Caltrans for the preliminary design. Matt has been very influential and working really hard to try to get a free span bridge, which would be ideal. But yeah, Caltrans has run many different iterations of the modeling, and it's just not working out. So while there will be improved, there will be a slightly longer span and a little more clear space. We're not getting a clear span bridge. It's just not in the cards at this point. Mhm.
Anything specific to the city of Solvang, I would probably refer to Roger. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure when each of these maps were originally developed, but FEMA anticipates the new maps to be adopted sometime in 2026. It varies. Sure, and I apologize, maybe I mixed messages here. These maps do not account for the burn scar. I was just taking the opportunity to talk about the Lake Fire burn scar and potential impact on Alamo Pintado Creek. But yeah, you're correct. Watersheds you change over time. Typically, I would say maybe 20 years or so, FEMA will come around and revise the maps. And the maps that we currently have before us do not include the burn scar. That's correct. The appeal period extends into, I think it was December 18th. Yes, all that information is on the website. You're welcome. My pleasure.
previous lives, and they come in and they make assessments of the brush, and they do all kinds of, satellite imagery, et cetera. And then this information is used by our insurance agencies to determine how much they get to charge us for insurance. So just making sure everybody's aware of that. Another item, the Tourism Marketing and Advisory Committee, the application period is opening. The appointments were just for a year, so they expire at the end of December. And so we'll be making applications available for anybody who wants to serve on that. LAFCO is looking for public members. This information is on our website and I believe our Facebook page. If you want to be a member of LAFCO, can't be a city employee. I was thinking about doing it, but you can't. I couldn't volunteer for that one. Just came across an article that was published today or yesterday. California braces for higher gas prices. Current state, the California Air Resources Board has approved new low carbon fuel standards aimed at combating climate change and pollution. Current state average for a gallon of gasoline is $4.51. The national average currently is $3.08, and having traveled throughout the summer, I can attest that it is significantly less around the country. It says once the new standards take effect, oil companies will be forced to buy more carbon credits or reduce carbon emissions during production. The added cost is expected to be passed along to consumers. It's not clear just how much gas prices will increase. A CARB analysis from 2023 estimated the increase at 47 cents a gallon. A University of Pennsylvania study predicts a much higher increase of 85 cents a gallon. So coming attractions thanks to the California Air Resources Board. Also, I'd commented previously, the state water project does maintenance every year around this time, and they shut it off effective about 2 weeks ago, and they need to extend it for another week. So we are using only well water currently. So if you've noticed a change in the feel and the smell of your water, that's why. So it appears that our state water will be turned back on about next Monday, week of November 18. Another item is SB CAG is asking for public to give input on unmet transit needs. This is an online survey available, and that information is also on our website and Facebook page. And that's all I have for now.
Anybody have questions for the report? I would like a couple. You said there was applications out for the tourism marketing group.
Yes, we're going to be making those available soon, yes.
What about for the Planning Commission and the DRC?
Those will be coming out as well, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Those appointments all end effective the end of the calendar year as well, and we will be making them available very soon.
Will they be on the website? We can just go search and find an application and turn it in?
That's the idea, yes.
That's the idea.
Well, we'll post on our website and
I'm being asked
Facebook.
these questions. And
Yeah,
I don't
no, that's
have the
good.
answers, so
That's
I've
good to
gotta
ask.
ask you. All right, good. Thank you, sir. I think that was everything I had. No other questions?
And then we're hoping to be able to start appointing people at the January 13th meeting.
January 13th, correct. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on then to the report out, council comments and requests. Comments, requests? All right, sir.
I wanted to give a shout out to the Public Works. I saw some sidewalk power washing and it looked really good. Thank you for doing all that. I wanted to also thank those in the election process. I felt that the campaign was very respectful, very on point with regards to issues and non-personal, very positive experience. So thank you to those candidates, and particularly Jamie Baker here tonight, a worthy candidate. And then well, congrats to Mark and Clow for their reelection, and
It was a hard.
it was
campaign.
tough, hard-fought
Yeah, yeah.
endeavor.
Unopposed. It's a.
And then again, thank you to Parks and Recreation and the team for the Veterans Program. It was very well run, and I heard many nice things about it. And I attended, as did Mayor Infante yesterday. It was a great program. Thank you. That's all I have.
You want to make
I have a question, though.
a.
Somebody running unopposed only got 97% of the vote. How does that work?
He got 86 when he ran for mayor.
No. I got 97 when I ran for mayor. It was 86 when I ran for council. No, I don't remember. Anyway,
You did better than last time, okay?
There's still some people that think that Mickey Mouse or Harambe or Rambo are
Yeah.
far more fitting
I
candidates.
don't know how do you get only 90s? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I only needed one, and my wife voted for me, so I'm in.
I do want to report that I attended the Cal Cities Conference along with Major-elect Brown. And some of the things that cities were talking about were housing, dealing with land ordinance and housing mandated by Sacramento, and dealing with it, fulfilling our obligations as cities while still striving to keep local control. Cal Cities does lobby quite a bit for advocating for cities to be able to determine their own planning and ordinances and regulations, and that's a big thing that they do. Homelessness was also a huge topic. There were a lot of cities sharing different approaches that they had with working with existing shelters or constructing villages that serve as interim housing until people are able to get housed. And it seems that about 60% of the homeless population does want to find housing. There's a 40% of the population that avoid the system at all costs for whatever reasons. We're all still trying to figure that out. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to see what other cities are doing. And thank you for an election that went far more smoothly than, some of those were thinking that it was going to go. Thanks.
I just have a few observations. California, as you all know, has lost congressional seats because our population is shrinking. And I just think it's just so tone deaf of the governor that the California Resources Board is appointees who are friends of Gavin Newsom's. They're all millionaires. And the middle class has been just taking a beating in the state for 4 years. And now I've heard as low as 65 and as high as $1.45 that gas is going to increase. So how much more difficult can the state of California make it for regular Joes and Janes to live in this state? It blows my mind. I will say this because I'm getting close to the end of my term. In my 14 years of planning commission and city council, other than a few builder issues, I don't hear complaints about the city and how things operate, and it's refreshing and it's enjoyable. I don't get a lot of emails complaining about every aspect of the city. I know we're higher staff now, and I also started out right at COVID, so that was always kind of a tumultuous time. I wanted to add on to what Dennis Beebe was talking about. This is the first year I could not make it to the Vets Memorial. But out of 16 million service members and men and women that served during World War II, as of 2023, there's only 118,000 left. Yeah, and that was a year and a half ago. So that's probably almost half of that now. So if you know anybody that served in World War II, God bless them, and give them a hug and tell them you love them and tell them you thank you for everything that they've done. When you think about these were 20, 21, 22-year-old kids, some as young as 17. you know, how easy, how lucky we are to have it the way we have it now. Just wonderful. And I want to congratulate Dave and Jamie. That was a tough one because both of you, I think, would serve the residents of Solvang very, very well. And I'm happy to watch you guys from afar. And I think that is about it. Oh, and I wore a garbage bag to vote. You saw that? Then I went to New Frontiers and went shopping. Some people thought it was nice. Some people hate me. That's all I got.
Okay, changing the subject a little bit. No, I have to go back to what Dennis had said. The Veterans Fair at the park was terrific. I had a chance to walk around and visit with a lot of people out there. It was really good. I did talk to Jim Richardson, who's the LAFCO rep right now. So we'll talk about that. I did have a chance to read a proclamation for VFW 7139 at the Vets Hall on Sunday. And yeah, I'm sorry, Monday, yesterday. And got to see the one surviving World War II veteran in the area carrying an American flag up through the crowd. We were all standing there waiting for him to fall over, I have to tell you. But it was very cool. It was very cool. Also, I've heard that there's going to be a prescribed burn coming on the side of Lompoc here. I think it's tomorrow or the next day. So if you're smelling smoke, it's probably the prescribed burn that's coming out. I'd have to go back to my APCD stuff and find out. That's that. Let's move on to item number 6, consent agenda. Madam Clerk, if you'd read that into the record, please.
Consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during public communications portion of this agenda.
Thank you. Do any of you have an item you want to pull?
I have nothing.
If not, I'd like to have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, we have no public hearing, so let's move on to item 8, discussion items. 8A, if you'd introduce that, please, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible action to approve RATP DEV request for a contract amendment to include rate structure modifications and rate increases to operate the Santa Ynez Valley Transit Services.
Staff report, please. Cool. Yeah.
do bill the gas separately, so that will be, that impact will be seen by the transit agency directly, not through them. This topic that we just discussed. So the projected contract increase that they're asking for over 3 years is estimated to be about $335,000. And that's about $100,000 a year.
Right.
It's a 14.5% increase over the contract amount. And however, they are proposing to reduce the inflationary increase from 4% for the last couple of years to 3.5%, which is it's a little bit. So here's what's proposed. And clear up here. Okay, so here's I'm sorry. So this is what I'm sorry. This is not what the rates are. This is what they are
Contract
showing us
changes.
as far as what their impact was. So over the first year of the contract, this is what their realized expenses were about $732,000, and the billing rates for the contract were just over 700. So they lost about 30 grand. The following year, about 40. This year, they're projected to lose about 70,000. Is what they're looking at this point. So again, what they're asking for is to be made whole, not to get this money, they got money back, but to be able to work, essentially,
Yeah.
without break even is what they're requesting. So we brought this to council, and so here's the request contract change. This is kind of looks like the other one. So this is the requested change. So this is the variable rate. Currently is $62.54. So the variable rate is going to change to $50.83 per revenue hour. However, there's a fixed rate of $246,000. So with that increase, the bottom line, they're looking at about $108,000 of increase that's if we realize the entire year, but we're almost halfway through the year. So this would be fully realized. But then the following year, we're looking at a difference around 110, and then the following year after that around 116 is what the request is. So we brought this to council on July 8th, and we received approval to bring this to Caltrans, because that was the next step, because a lot of these transit monies are it's not city general fund money. It's heavily subsidized by the feds and the state. And
Time to get up.
Hey, Roger.
Howdy doody time.
So Caltrans currently provides oversight for the federal transit agency. So we reached out to them. We received council approval to reach out to Caltrans and say, okay, well, let's send it to Caltrans and get approval from them, and then bring it back to council for approval of the contract amendment. Caltrans, what they provided to us is included in your package. They provided a directive. So first is we sent it to them, and they said, we need more information here. We're not seeing everything here. And then like a week later, we got something else saying, here's our new directive for this, and basically it's just you guys do what you want to do. You guys know your transit agency more than we do. And we're just like, oh, so what is it? Do we need more information, and what kind of information do we need? Give us some directions. So we called Caltrans, set up a meeting, met with them, and they gave us some really good input on what was really what the FTA is going to look for when they come in, and when they do audit. It's just a matter of time. They're going to audit us, and they want to see what we're up against. So what they told us was to independently review and confirm the market changes, and also take a look
At the contract and make sure the contract allowed for us to do this. So we did review the contract. We work with Chelsea, and the contract does allow us to do this if we're agreeable. And then we did an independent analysis, and we provided a memo in the packet as well. But I'll hit the fine points here. So we had our transit consultant help us out here. So currently we're, and our Roadrunner representatives are here, so they can speak to this a little bit more. But currently, here's what's represented and what we found. I was hoping that they don't see this, otherwise they might ask for more money. But, you know, it's, Ventura County is at $21, which is about 10% higher. I mean, they're asking for a 14% increase, but you look at City of Lompoc, they're 15% higher. Santa Barbara MTD is almost $27, and on average in the Santa Barbara metro area, for on average, the driver salary is around $27 an hour. So if we're, and you know, I mean, this is all impacted by state changing minimum wages. You know, that the minimum for wages for food and fast food, you know, that basically impacts everybody, because it's like, why am I going to drive a bus? I can just go flip burgers and make more money.
Do we pay CalPERS on these?
No, these are employees of Roadrunner and RTP Dev.
Does Roadrunner pay CalPERS?
No.
Okay, because they're not.
No, they are an independent contract.
Okay, thank you.
So we also looked at the other costs that were represented, that we were told insurance has increased about 42% across the board. So our transit consultant looked, and the consumer price index for commercial vehicle, driver insurance has seen an increase over the last, from 21 to 24 of about 48%. So that's real. That's, we looked at these from various other websites and independent research that we've done. Also, the producer price index for motor vehicle electrical equipment is at almost 14% increase. Steering suspension parts about 5%. Motor vehicle manufacturing increased about 9%. Here's the big one. Motor vehicle parts and merchant wholesalers increased 52%.
Is that annually? Because you have a 3-year.
Yeah, that's over the 3 years. The realized over.
That by 3 each of those.
Yeah, yep. But that's what's increased from 2021, which is when this RFP was out, and they were penciling out the cost that they would charge us. Until now, this is what the increase they've seen. So the current operational budget, this is one of the comparisons that was asked for previously back in April when we first came. The operational budget with the fuel and everything else is about 1.3 million, and approximately, which is approximately $30 per rider if you map it out. But again, it's highly subsidized. Riders aren't paying $30 an hour, $30 per ride. But the equivalent cost increase is about 2% per ride, $2 per rider is what we're looking at. State and federal revenues fund the transit operations. So there's no additional cost to the city or the general fund for this. It is, or other discretionary funding. We're not going to have to contribute Measure U or Measure E or any of these other ballot measures to it. This is covered by the transit monies that we receive, the city of Buellton receives, and the county unincorporated areas receive for transit. And they per discussions with them, they are agreeable to reassess if they don't see if they don't give their guys a raise. They will forego the 3.5% inflationary increase. Moving forward, until that is seen, because that's one of the things is we want to make sure that the drivers are paid appropriately. They're providing a good customer service to the residents of Solvang and the Valley, and we want to make sure they're taken care of. So the action tonight is for approval or denial of this amendment number 1, and approval of the contract will address this contract until July 1, 2027. It is worked in for an optional 5 years to negotiate based on the CPI, the cost construction price index. Based on that, we would negotiate a price after 2027. And with that concludes the staff's presentation, and there are representatives from RATP Dev and Roadrunner here available to answer any other particular questions about the service they provide.
Questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that during COVID, there was no reduction in expenses?
There, I believe they still, I wasn't here, so I can't speak exactly, but we reduced the number of trips. There weren't as many people riding. We didn't,
Correct.
yeah, and then wasn't, however, you know, they still ran an office. They still had people showing up to the office and working.
But their cost was less during COVID.
Yeah, the cost was less, but it was still, it wasn't, what, I don't have the exact numbers, but I would assume, let's say the ridership and the routes were dropped 90%. Their cost probably didn't drop 90% because they still have some staff here and still some drivers.
Proposed minimum wage is $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I got.
I have a question. When your report says it costs $30, that's $30 every time that somebody gets in the bus? That's per ride, or is that per rider?
What that is, that's per, what I did, I just did some back of the envelope math. I took our total cost for everything and divided it by the annual ridership.
Okay,
You came
so
out with
it
about
could,
30 bucks.
okay, so it's just every time that somebody takes a trip, yeah, it's
Yeah.
costs
So
$30.
we're running the bus. If we get more ridership, then it'll be a little bit less because the denominator will,
Yeah.
you know. the
Yeah,
math
no, I
changes.
get it. This comes to no surprise to me. I'm very familiar with public transportation and buses and insurance and things like that. So yeah, these numbers are not surprising.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I had a quick question. This is a contract renegotiation, so my question is really, when we initiated this contract, the other bidders, would we have taken their bid if it was this much more?
The way we have to do these,
I mean, I guess where I'm getting at,
yeah.
are we getting sandbagged or, you know,
Aye.
from the original contract, no disrespect to anybody here, I'm looking after the people of Solvang and what they're spending for this, so
I understood.
that's my concern. So, and I wasn't part of those negotiations when this contract was initially given.
Yeah.
So, my question basically is, how does that compare to either the number 2 bid or whatever else at that time?
This is, so to answer your question, this was not a, you know, whoever submits the lowest cost automatically gets the job. This was a request for proposal that came in and was qualifications based. And the cost was considered, but it was just one of the scoring rubric. The other, there was one other transit operator that bid on it, and they were, we interviewed both, and Roadrunner came out on top. They were the unanimous decision based on, by the scoring team. If they had proposed at that point what these costs, we would have taken a look at it, and we would have checked with, you know, we certainly would have done a cost analysis, because this is a bit of an increase, and we wouldn't have realized these costs at that point. But
Just curious
yeah.
how that plays out.
One of the mentions was the increased price of gas. I was under the impression we were going to be getting electric vehicles for this.
So I just pulled a PO for our next vehicle replacement, which is a gas vehicle. So we're getting 2 new gas vehicles that have been on the block since before I started. In fact, when I started about 3 years ago, there was one bus that was already ordered, and then it fell off the truck on the way to the. Literally, it fell off the train. And so we had to get in line, and this was during, you know, when everything was stuck on a barge out in LA Harbor and all that other stuff was going on. So the supply chain was just really slow. So that supplier, we fired them, and now we're going through another supplier, which has, you know, gone through a proper procurement as well. We do have funding that's through SBCAG, probably in the next year, I think it's gonna come in for 1.2 million for at least 3, potentially 4 and maybe 5 electric vehicles. And we also got full funding for the lot across the street to the tune of 900,000 through SBCAG to fund that development so that we can actually build chargers for these buses. Because we could have the electric buses all we want. Where are we going to plug them in? You know, we kind of need both. It's a chicken and egg type thing. You know, you need the chicken and the egg in order to make it work.
Well, I know I've been talking to, his name is going like this, one of the board members on the SBCAG, and they've got something like 300-400 of these electric buses of this size been ordered and shipped, coming in. Yeah, I'm sure you've been talking to them, and I even sent you something lately on it was an interview form for what we needed and everything else. I forget what it was now.
Yeah.
I give that stuff to you. I don't know anything what I'm doing.
Yeah, I've been meeting with, I can't pronounce his name, but we call him G, is what he goes by. But he's with Santa Maria Regional Transit. And so they have an electric bus that they've purchased a few of. And it's not your standard cutaway. It's a little smaller, but it looks like a very large van. And it has some good benefits and has some other benefits that might help our routes as well. One of them being is that since it's not the full-size cutaway, you don't need a Class B license to drive it. So that's another thing that I know that Roadrunner's been challenged with, is getting the drivers with the licensure and everything else. So but that's one of the things we might be considering as we move forward.
Good to hear. Thank you very much. Any last comments? No? Do we have any public comment on this? Yes, sir, please.
I remember riding the short bus to school every day.
Please tell us who you are, what's up.
Yes, my name is Dominic Perez, and I'm the general manager for the San Ynez Valley Transit System. I just wanted to acknowledge, I'm sorry, Mr. David Brown's question. It's a very welcome question. We don't want anyone to feel like we're sandbagging or just trying to exploit anything here. To directly answer your question of the pricing, if we had priced it the way we're doing it right now, back when this was an RFP, the pricing that we're giving right now is a result of the fully realized effect that COVID had on transit, and so we wouldn't have given this price back then. The pendulum was in the middle of swinging, and that's when we tried to price it. Did our best. It wasn't fully just what the effect was going to be. So we're doing our best to now rectify things, and we appreciate the city's help with that. And I'm open for any other questions.
Thank you very much for the comments. Appreciate it. Anybody else want to make a comment? All right, we'll bring it back to the council. So at this point in time, one last question for you, Roger. If I understood what you said, it's not actually coming out of the city coffers directly. This is funding that comes from outside, so saying we approve it does not change our budget going forward?
It does not. We are per the MOU. Solvang is the lead agency of SYVT. However, anticipating this, I included in the budget with this proposal in full, just in case it did come to fruition, so that we didn't have to go back. Because it's like you might budget something, and if you come in less, then no big deal. So that's kind of what we were banking on. So again, sorry, long story. We do not have to modify the budget at all. We're in good. We're taken care of.
Thank you.
But
Yes, sir.
a follow-up to that, is there any change in pricing for our riders?
Not at this time. No.
In that case, I believe we need a motion to approve this contract change. I'll move that we approve the contract change. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Roll call vote?
Councilmember Clark,
I wish I had more information, but I will vote yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to item, I believe it's 8B we're on now. If you would read that into the record for us, Ms. Clerk.
Discussion and possible action to provide staff direction regarding updates to Solvang side ordinances.
Staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. So again, this evening, this is a discussion and direction on potential sign ordinance amendments. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing this evening. This is a discussion of potential amendments to the sign ordinance, so there'll be no adoption of any sort of amendment this evening. As a follow-up to that, the city staff is currently undertaking a zoning ordinance update, and so as a part of that effort, there'll be no proposed amendments to the upcoming Chapter 13 as well. There'll be minor amendments in that chapter, but mainly just flipping out zone name changes, and that's it. Based on the direction that we do receive this evening, city staff will commence amendments to the ordinance, and we are recommending that those amendments are completed in-house, again, based on the direction received this evening. And then finally, enforcement of the existing ordinance will continue as allowed per federal case law. So again, what we discuss this evening does not pause the existing side ordinance, and so the enforcement will continue as what is through our adopted ordinance. So just a quick brief on your sign ordinance. It was adopted in 1990. There were minor amendments through 2002, as outlined in your staff report. The first major work effort occurred in 2003, 2004. That focused on allowing additional signage as well as limit the amount of illumination of signs. That work effort consisted of the work with the BAR, or the Board of Architectural Review at the time. That got passed, and then we chugged along until 2012, where an additional work effort was completed by city staff to create more liberal sign regulations, reformatting, and create exceptions. That was again passed by the city council, and that work effort, that consisted of 2 BAR members, 2 planning commission members, and 2 other additional committee members in 2012. In 2018, the city council directed city staff to update the sign ordinance along with issuance of an RFP to update what was known as the land use element and the community design element and the community design guidelines. So as outlined in your staff report, those did not come to fruition because city staff grossly underestimated the amount required to complete this work. In this, as far as the signage goes, the goal was to streamline the sign ordinance by eliminating a BAR review, or Board of Architectural Review, which has now been taken over by the Design Review Committee. And another portion was to eliminate signs on kiosks on private property, signage on benches, and some other fixes. That actually went all the way to Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did pass that at a 5-0 vote, but then was subsequently tabled by the city attorney at the time and the city manager with the promise that it would come back later in the year in 2020, and it never reappeared. So it essentially just died with the proposed changes, and those were never enacted. Between 2020 and 2022, COVID-19 had a relaxation of sign regulations, specifically to accommodate requirements for the state of California, as well as also from an economic development standpoint. And then finally, in 2023, the sign ordinance regulations were directed to be reinforced as written by the council at the time. So it sort of gives you an overview of where we got to where we are today. Couple bigger things that are affecting our sign ordinance are case laws. Again, knowing that we had these work efforts in 2012, but specifically the 2018 work effort, as noted in your staff report, never really accounted for one of the larger cases I'm going to get into, which was kind of a head scratcher, but it is what it is. So one of the main court cases that affects our sign ordinance is known as Central Hudson Gas versus Public Service Commons. It's actually a case out of New York. If I butcher this, Chelsea, please forgive me. I'm not a law student. But the central portion of the case was, at the time, the state of New York limited advertising for public utilities. Central Hudson is a public utility company. They disagreed with that, and so they challenged that. The court ultimately upheld that it could advertise. However, it could advertise, but with regulations that further significant government interests. So kind of defined the sort of four-pronged test that was created. And then the other big takeaway was that reasonable alternative channels must exist in a sign ordinance, or in an ordinance as such. So again, this is this court case, while it was from 1980, provides us that compelling interest that signs conform to certain standards, and keeping our brand is probably the best takeaway from that case, and keep that in mind as we move on to the presentation this evening. The other big case actually happened in 2015, which is why I mentioned it was a head scratcher that this was never brought up in 2018, was that in 2015 there's a case called Reed versus the Town of Gilbert. And it really changed the way how courts reviewed validity of signs. The actual sign in question, is the picture on your PowerPoint presentation, was these what we consider snipe signs that were placed all around the city of Gilbert for a church who moved from place to place. The city challenged the church on where they could place the sign. The church did not like it, and they went ahead and challenged it. But ultimately, in the end, the biggest crutch of this court case is that there are different dimensions and duration standards based on what is called the content of a sign. And what a content of a sign is basically boils down to is what you read on a sign, that's content. So if you have to read a sign to figure it out, that's content. And so when you have a content-based sign ordinance, it has a much more rigorous level of review due to the First Amendment free speech issues. So basically, the Supreme Court struck down the Town of Gilbert's sign ordinance, thereby striking down a lot of sign ordinances around the country. And so during this time period between 2015, 16, 17, and 18, a lot of municipalities, particularly here in the state of California, were revising their sign ordinances to come into conformance with Reed versus the Town of Gilbert. And it basically boils down to these three aspects of a sign ordinance is time, place, manner. So what that means is an ordinance can regulate signs at the time or duration a sign can be up, place, meaning the location of a sign, and the manner of which it's placed. So whether it's bolted on, affixed to, etc. So a sign ordinance that really tests against the Town of Gilbert will meet these three aspects. Our existing sign ordinance contains many content-based instances, and I'll get to that in the next slide. And then what we have done internally is create policies for consistency with that Supreme Court case law. Again, even though our sign ordinance is counter to that, we need to provide these policies to protect our own interests. And so the content-based language includes things such as civic event signs, construction signs, trespassing signs, open house signs, residential identification signs, prohibition of specific words on a sign, prohibition of internally illuminated signs for certain types of uses. So this has been noted in the TRC. We actually don't allow illuminated signs unless you're a hotel. And then allowances for symbols on signs, prohibition of color where there's no government health, safety, welfare connection that has been established, et cetera. So you can see that there's a lot of issues in play with our existing sign ordinance just being in line with Reed versus the Town of Gilbert, which really opens up the city for potential litigation when it comes to our sign ordinance. So essentially, as we try to continue to enforce it, you come across a person with the right time and money and effort that they can challenge this. And so we're really trying to avoid that. So our existing sign ordinance does contain standards for type, size, and placement, which is fantastic. Again, that's really what sign ordinances are looking for. It does contain various definitions for sign types. In 2012, a lot of them carry over. There are some that should be further defined, but again, any amendment can fix that. It does provide exceptions to be granted, which is another good positive thing, is you would have to go through the DRC for such an exception. It does require approval of signs through the Design Review Committee, which is basically it's our own flavor to sign ordinances. Most communities actually do these at a staff level, whether it's over the counter or it's a very rudimentary staff review that takes about a week. As in our staff report, Lompoc and Buellton do that at a staff level, and again, many other jurisdictions do the same thing. And then our sign ordinance contains temporary sign standards. However, these are extremely confusing. And so usually if I have trouble reading through a temporary sign ordinance, then that's usually a bad sign. So it's confusing based on who can approve what, where it can be held, where it can be done, for the duration of where it can be done, and sometimes the information doesn't actually jive with each other. So again, temporary sign standards would need to be improved. As for the process of our existing signs, I kind of alluded to a little bit. What we do now is we take in what's called a sign application for a sign permit. Prior to 2023, city staff had set an arbitrary deadline, which was typically about a week before the DRC meeting. So essentially, we would tell an applicant, hey, if you get it in on X date, we can get you on the DRC. That's like equivalent of telling my teen son, who's a bright kid, but if I give him a deadline, he'll sure as hell do it on the 11th hour and give me something that's not really great to give. But that's his fatal flaw. So and it's sort of the same thing with us, is we establish this arbitrary deadline, and what this did is, in order for us to help streamline the application, we would just quickly run through it and give to the DRC, which didn't provide a sufficient analysis, which then creates sort of this perception of a city staff versus the DRC versus the applicant. And it's not something that's productive in terms of the public hearing process. City staff provided comments based, so what we did is we eliminated the arbitrary deadline, utilized the Permit Streamlining Act since it is a permit, and instead give us city staff time to review, analyze it, and then actually work with the applicant and point out things that from a signs code standpoint they were missing, or they didn't include, or they could reduce and change, so that way we could then send it to DRC through a consent agenda item and get it approved. And again, that's been really valuable for us in terms of being able to analyze the actual permit applications that come in, give the feedback that's necessary. 9 out of 10 applicants actually receive the feedback very well. They do the quick modification, and then we then place it on the DRC agenda with the provided analysis. And again, there's a flow chart that's in your staff report that outlines sort of how this goes from application, staff review, we create a staff report, and then place it on the DRC agenda, and then the DRC makes a decision. So knowing all this that I've just described to you, since I've started in September 2023, I've heard a lot of feedback from our business community in terms of our sign ordinance and how cumbersome it is. You've heard that feedback from the constituents as well, which is why we're bringing this item before you this evening. So in the summer, in early summer, we decided to do a sign survey. We created the survey, we sent it out to existing business owners to gauge their understanding and other issues they may have on the sign ordinance. We created about 200 flyers with a QR code and asked 6 questions, and these were to take this brief survey. Out of the 200 we sent, we got 55 business owners to respond, or 27%, which isn't that bad. Sort of the biggest takeaways of our sign survey is 79% were aware of the sign regulations. 85% of businesses believe they were in compliance. 62% believe that the sign regulations negatively affected their business, and by those regulations is what's in the books today. 31% felt that the sign ordinance helped maintain the community character. So you can say you have those two balancing acts, essentially those 2 Supreme Court cases weighing out it, of we're making this tightrope act of trying to maintain our community character, at the same time trying to help our businesses and help with the economic development standpoint. And 6% were indifferent on the sign ordinance. They just went ahead and did what we asked them to do. We asked a very open-ended question regarding challenges business face with our sign ordinance. These were the commonalities that were found. Businesses cited that there were none, and that appeared quite frequently, indicating that some respondents faced no challenges or issues in getting signs. A-frame signs / sandwich board signs was mentioned quite often as a common challenge for businesses with their inability to display such signs. So our current sign ordinance basically does not allow any of this type of signage, period, whether it's on public right-of-way or private property. Not allowed, prohibit, and restrictive signage. It was also a commonly used theme in the context of limiting signage for advertising. And then finally, inconsistency, which is a recurring complaint about uneven enforcement of rules. And I could definitely understand where that's coming from, particularly as we as city staff have helped to rebuild our code compliance division and department and have sort of a basic a procedure and process in place. So business owners, unfortunately, have been caught in the middle from COVID to the enforcement of the sign ordinance to city staff not necessarily understanding the ins and outs of what it takes for a sign ordinance. So in that survey, we asked what types of items could directly impact their business. The top was the need for an A-frame and sandwich board sign at 21%. The need for a banner or temporary signs at 14%. Lack of clear regulations at 11%. Cost of a sign permit is 9%, and so just FYI, it's approximately $392, give or take, for a sign permit. And again, as stated earlier in the process, that covers time for city staff to review, produce a staff report, and make a presentation of the DRC. Speed of obtaining a permit, 7%, and then increased temporary signs during special events, 7%, and then none, 4%. So some respondents felt that we didn't need to do anything. So again, this is a microcosm of the respondents of businesses. If everything's hunky-dory, you don't got the time, you're not going to respond. If you clearly feel energized about this, you're going to respond. But again, it's really trying to take a snapshot in time and pulse of our businesses. So with all this information before you this evening, we are looking for direction for potential amendments, and we'll focus on those items in a minute. But based on whatever comes about from this evening, we would amend the sign ordinance in-house. So that's the first. We would not go out to a consultant. We can do this work effort in-house. Staff is recommending that the DRC be used to craft whatever standards come about this. So this would work with the DRC over a series of meetings. We would like to present an admin draft to the Chamber of Commerce to, again, solicit their feedback as sort of our main avenue for our local businesses. And then once that's completed, check in back with the City Council to confirm and make any additional changes, and then actually go through the codification process. So time frame you're looking at anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And again, that's just basically based on the ability to meet with the DRC and go over this work effort, vet it with the city attorney, and then city staff producing the documents that are necessary. So based on the sign survey, based on the court cases that we have, these are sort of the key areas that we are looking for direction for potential amendments. The first is the processing of sign permits. As indicated in your staff report in 2018, the City Council did authorize city staff to move forward with amendments to eliminate the then BAR as the decider for sign permits and put that back into city staff's hands. It can go, again, this is council direction. The pros for it are, as long as you amend it and create standards, sign permits should be pretty easy to do. And again, these are based on standards that are in the code. If an applicant wishes to not follow those standards, then they would need to seek an exception. That exception then requires a public hearing. Conversely, we can continue what we're doing today and maintain the DRC as the body to approve the signs, which means that there is a wait for permanent signage. And it means that the DRC, it is a public hearing, which means the business owner does need to come out and do those public hearings. They do need to produce the required documents, et cetera. If you do go that route in the DRC route and maintain it, I highly do recommend you work with cities, or you direct city staff to help amend the temporary signage portion of it, because that's been the chief complaint for businesses, is the time it takes to get to DRC and potentially get an approval. And at that time, our temporary signage is pretty, it's not good. I'll put it like that. So that's one thing. The one thing that city staff is going to make a recommendation on is elimination of content-based regulations based on the court cases that were presented to you. That is something that should be directed staff to do. And again, utilizing the DRC to create those standards that are content neutral. It's very key to a good functioning sign ordinance. The third is the A-frame sandwich board sign. So again, as pointed in the sign survey, there is some There are some voices out there that do want A-frame signs. This can go in a multitude of ways. It could go from, yes, we'll allow them in a public right-of-way, which then requires an encroachment permit and other permitting system. Other way of going it is saying, you look, we don't want them in the public right-of-way, understanding that, especially here in town, we have quite the busy season. We have Yule Fest, we have 4th of July, we have weekends that there's just really jam-packed, and there really may not be a proper location for these type of A-frame signs. However, if you're on private property and you have the ability to have that space to put that in, then maybe that can be green lighted. And again, using a very set standards of the look and the way you want the placement, the time, and the manner of how it should look. Additional temporary signage, I did allude to that, and by temporary signage, those are banner signs. I know at one time the city did allow banner signs, and they went back and banned them all together. But maybe that is a bridge where we would allow a banner sign if you're waiting for your permanent signage to be heard by the DRC. And so those are typically what we're looking at in terms of temporary signs and duration. Again, comes back to time, place, manner, and understanding and what is our brand here in the community. And then finally, banner signs. So banner signs is a very interesting one. Banner signs is actually the one thing that Randy can approve. I don't know why. It's just there, and it doesn't give a clear definition of what type of banner signs can be approved. And so and this is where that confusion comes from, because is it the code alludes it to make it sounds like it's meant to be the civic event signs, the ones that you see out along 246 that's on private property, or the ones coming into town, which kind of makes sense. But at the same token, it's not clear whether those banner signs can be approved for private property. So again, that's just sort of a cleanup that would need to get done. I know this is a lot of information to unpack, and again, I want to be very clear, we're not approving an amendment this evening. This is for a work effort to be green-lighted based on discussions this council's had and wanted information back from my department to read back out to y'all. So with that, I'll open up to questions from the council.
Questions? Yeah, would a construction fence having a sign, financing provided by X, is that, how would that be? And then also, how would you define awnings?
So
And the printing on awnings?
that's currently defined. There is a way to do it. You don't call it a construction sign anymore. There's various non-content ways to call it to kind of get the user to where it goes. I forget I believe in my last jurisdiction, we called it temporary signs for sites under development, and then allowed for, again, time, place, manner. So simply a size, the duration of how long it could be, and where it could be placed. And you left it at that.
Okay. And what about vacant properties with signs in the windows, whether it be for any particular reason? I don't know.
Well, and again, our current code allows for sale for rent signs to be placed. But again, these are at small numbers, and there's a rhyme and reason, because we don't want to clutter the community. So our current code allows that, and that really could be pumped up, pumped down. I wouldn't want to pump it down, but again, we would have to translate that into the new code essentially.
If a person wants a sign, do they also have to have a business license?
It depends on what type of sign we're talking about.
Brick and mortar?
Well, it depends on what type of sign we're talking about, whether it's a commercial message or a non-commercial message. And the answer is no on either or. You don't need a business certificate to put up a sign. You need a sign permit.
But you don't, if there's a business and they're advertising a sign, should they not also have a business license?
Business certificates that's a business tax, and that's a whole separate issue.
I'm just trying to identify both. And then finally, I say finally, right now, how long does it take for a sign to be approved from the time they come in and get an application to the time they can hang that sign? How long does that take? Best and worst case.
We have a couple that are currently worst cases where they're plus 90 days.
And what's your best case?
Best case in the current environment today, of the way it is set today.
How do you want us to change it?
Well, again,
Worse?
that's a
What are you feeling?
that's a decision for the folks here in the dais.
Yeah, no, I'm asking for your opinion. And how long does it take now for,
In a good case, about 3 weeks. And again, that's simply because we have to take in the application, make sure everything's correct, and then turn around, write a staff report, and put it on a DRC agenda. And then depending on when they turn it in, it depends on the date that
and
it falls on.
regardless, it's $392 for that application?
Very much so.
Okay, whether it's a 2x2 sign or a 10x2.
That's correct. And whether it's 5 signs or 1.
But you were saying it's because of your staff time, which is 90 days sometimes, so.
Well, and I wouldn't say 90 days on our end. Now, let me rephrase that. So from our end, we take up to 30 days. Typically, we're about 2 weeks it takes for us to do a review and get a letter out if there's an issue. The signs that are out there that are 90 plus days is they've had a letter in their hands, they've been given direction on what to do, they're slow about making potential changes, or they don't want to make any changes and then they want to ask for the exception, but they're not providing us the reason and rationale or rhyme for the said exception.
In your report, you mentioned that there are times where the ordinance is left up to interpretation and the ordinance is sometimes in conflict with itself. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I did earlier. The banner signs, that's actually, that's the answer. Again, there's a little line that says banner signs may be approved by the city manager. Okay, what kind of banner signs? Because then on the next in the TRC, it discusses there should be no banner signs allowed in the TRC. Okay, so what is it? Can Randy approve a banner sign anywhere? But isn't the TRC ban banner signs? That's an issue.
Okay.
And so hence why there has been a policy that's not written that has said, oh, we meant civic signs, so he approves civic signs.
All right.
But that is an issue.
Finally, I'll ask you, where is the town of Gilbert?
Arizona.
In Maricopa County.
Okay.
I think we need a 2-day workshop on this to go into detail. This is too light and it'd be really important to get the citizens involved in this more than what we've just touched on this evening.
Well, hold on, let me ask a few questions first so I can help, so I can understand, because I went through and read this in pretty good detail, and I'm confused. It's a common issue with me. First off, you use the term land use clearance. Can you define that, please?
So in our current code, pretty much any action that you have to do aside from painting your walls requires a land use clearance. It's been borrowed from Santa Barbara County. It's been in our books since we incorporated.
I don't care where it's been. What is it?
It's basically our ability to tell you, yeah, you can do that.
Okay. One of the things I also was confused by was, and you even made the statement during your presentation that, Lompoc and Santa Barbara or Santa Monica could do things on the desk. But you can put a bright purple neon sign in the middle of Lompoc and it doesn't change their character. You do that here, and it's a drastic change to our character. So I dislike that as a comparison.
So to quickly refute that, or not refute it, but just basically, that's where your standards come in. Because if your standards are well written and you say no illuminated signs, period, then thou shalt not have illuminated signs. And therefore, city staff would then respond back to say, I cannot approve this because you've illuminated the signs.
But you propose in here that one of the standards should say, okay, I'll find it here in a minute. Basically, it was talking about signs should be in a Danish, preferred a Danish style. So it's not objective, it's preferred, which means you can just approve anything that comes in, whether it's Danish or not.
Okay, but are we
that's the existing ordinance.
Yeah, and also, are we talking modern Danish or are we talking old world style? Because those are completely different.
I understand, but it's not defined. And what I saw on this in here was that attachment A was the existing sign ordinance, but attachment A says it was November 1st of 2024. That's
Yeah,
the
it
date
is.
on this.
Yeah,
So
because
the
that's the
existing
date we printed it.
ordinance.
That's the date we
Okay.
printed it.
But that's existing regulations? 'Cause
Yes.
It doesn't say that on here. It
It's
just
very
says
much,
sign
it's,
reg.
it's very much existing regulations, and it's very much, if you've heard a DRC meeting, it's a bone of contention with a lot of business owners that they have to change and modify their logos, that they've worked very hard to do their own branding to meet content.
Okay, so it says business-specific information is prohibited on bench signs. So what do you put on a bench sign?
I don't know. That's in your code. That's why in 2018 they wanted to amend the bench sign portion of it, but it never finished. So we have this anomaly. Wow. I mean, this little microcosm of our sign ordinance is basically the whole zoning ordinance for all intents and purposes. It's got question marks. It's got where did these rhyme and reasons come from, and that's hence why the coming of this item to potentially amend.
Okay,
And Mayor, if I may, the last section of the sign ordinance is the flags ordinance, and we updated that more recently in a manner that's similar to what Raphael is describing as a potential option for you to consider. And that has set objective standards for flags that can be approved at the staff level. And then if the applicant wants a sign that doesn't meet those standards or needs an exception, then it goes to the DRC for flags. And so that's sort of a mini version of what he's talking about for what might work for the whole sign, like all types of signs, not just flags. So we had pulled that out because flags were becoming a particular issue, and updated that more recently with that kind of same structure that Raphael is discussing, where the DRC still has a role, but there's a good portion of things, I mean, and the DRC did a great job coming up with those flag standards. You know, we took that through that with them, and that, you know, if you meet those criteria, staff can approve it, and then the DRC has the role for the more complicated type applications.
and there's a lot in here that makes sense to me, to do things like that. First off, what's a cloud of words do for you?
Oh, the word cloud basically allows you to have a snapshot of what are, and the bigger the word means is the more often a respondent used that word.
You didn't define it, so I didn't know.
Oh,
It looked like a bunch of junk to me.
okay, well,
Go ahead.
that's how usually it tells the user, hey, out of the thousands of words that were used, the bigger the word was, that means that was used the most by most respondents.
Okay. I don't have a problem with this eliminate the DRC from approving signs if the signs meet the standards in the ordinance. The problem I have with that is the design standards. How do you define a design standard with regard to colors? You can only have one of 20 colors?
You can't, because color's content.
Right.
Time, place, manner. That's what we're limited to.
Time, place,
Time, place, manner.
banner.
Yep.
Well, the only banner I remember that.
Manner.
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 Sorry, that's what I was
Yeah.
missing.
So the only color that can be regulated is colors that mimic traffic signs. And that's a health safety.
make
That would be the one that you can, and most jurisdictions continue to regulate that. But again, and this is where the DRC is extremely instrumental, particularly our members that are currently sitting in right now, is their knowledge and ability to understand the brand that is Solvang, and understanding how we want to maintain that community character. You can create and craft standards. Case in point, and I'll throw it out here. We have quite a few signs that sometimes come in through the door that are wall signs that are made of metal.
Yeah.
So,
The case, I sat in the DRC when the guy came in with his metal sign with plastic letters on it.
correct.
But he didn't even ask for approval on that, he just came up with it.
So again, with a clear sign ordinance, it provides us to say, okay, that is not our brand. We want to see wood or wood-like signs, so we provide a list of materials that we can use. We provide the height of the lettering that we want to use. We can ban plastic, we can ban illumination, but you can see how I'm starting to string together an ordinance, but without saying a color or a letter or anything like to that matter. Now, if someone still wants to come in with a plastic-looking sign that's in metal, they most certainly can. But then that requires the exception, then that requires the public hearing, and then they can make their case to the DRC or whatever body you want it, and then they can continue on. They don't like the DRC's decision, then they can appeal that to the Planning Commission, then they can appeal that to the council ultimately in the end. They can follow through the steps for appeal.
Okay. Any other comments up here? Do we have any public comment on this issue? You know, I suspected that there might be one person in this room.
And I've done Aaron Peterson, Solvang, California. And while I am just one person, I can tell you a list of people that I'm speaking for. And that includes Olsons and Verklers and the SEMA Group and Ed St. George and the Sorensen family and the Halmies and Max Hamburg and Kim Jensen and David Rasmussen and Aaron Peterson. And as a landlord and as a tenant, we're very concerned over our sign ordinance. We all think that it's very healthy that we re-examine it. It's healthy for a business to re-examine your menu, re-examine your prices, re-examine what we're doing. So no one is opposed to doing it. It's a good thing to do this. And some of the low-hanging fruit is absolutely not good. We need to obviously be legal. We need to be legal with our time, place, manner. We need to make sure that we're not going afoul of the law. Some of the individual issues that were brought up, like banners. That's first off, I applaud that there was a survey. 55 people responded. 14% of 55 is I think it's 8 people out of 200 businesses. Talked about banners, A-frames, 21% of 55. That's 11 of 200 businesses. I don't think there's a hue and cry to have banners taken away, because I've always thought there were civic banners, because that's what we've always done, and we've never had banners. Temporary signs, absolutely. That's low-hanging fruit that we should be able to do over the counter for time, place, manner while a business is getting open. The process of applying, and part of it is that the DRC only meets once a month and sometimes doesn't. I think they do most months. But if they come up with oh my gosh, change this color, change this letter, you've got to go another month. It can get to 90 days, as Raphael says, in a heartbeat. And that's really a discouragement to businesses. Simple things like a relocated sign that was already approved, you've moved it down the street and you've got to come back through, pay your money, and get it reapproved. When you're hanging it to 7 feet off the ground, there's some things that Raphael has absolutely pointed out, because I hear about it as a landlord and as an applicant. We need to look at Santa Barbara's sign ordinance, because they do regulate in their districts colors, and they're Spanish and they're historical. I had 2 restaurants in the harbor. It was a nightmare going through it, but I had to meet what I had to meet. They had to be relief, and they had all kinds of issues. I agree with City Councilman Clark. We need to have a group get together. It needs to be a working shop. You got 55 people responded, and some said it's all good. We need to have people involved, because back to the very first point that somebody up there said is that all we have is design. That's all we have in this town. Right. We don't have a beach, we don't have a mountain, we don't have a ski, we don't have a lake, we have design. And TOT is driven by us having businesses that look good and people come to town. So that's mine. 3 minutes, hard to.
Thank you, Aaron, appreciate it. Anybody else? Do we have anybody on Zoom? It doesn't appear that way. So we'll bring it back to the council. At this point in time, Raphael, you're asking for
Direction.
direction.
Right. So again, if the direction is to hold a workshop that's separate to this, most certainly we can. We could almost, again, I would almost want this to be a workshop held by the DRC, because it is an important issue. It really is. And I agree with Aaron. And when I first started here, I've actually been privy to do 2 sign ordinances for 2 separate jurisdictions, facing the same sort of different issues. They are here, and our brand means everything.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And design means everything. I'm 100% in agreement with that. There's a reason why I have so many family and friends in awe that I work here. It is kind of cool to work here, but they're in awe because the first thing they say is, "This is a beautiful community, and you are so blessed to be working in such a cool community that looks so beautiful." And I agree with them. It's 100%. So we need, but at the same token, I understand that there is frustration in terms of the processing of our sign ordinance. Our sign ordinance can be cleaned up with a low-hanging fruit for things that make it consistent with state law or federal case law. But some of the bigger issues, such as A-frame signs, such as banner signs, there's a reason why we banned them wholeheartedly back in the early 2000s, because those were issues. However, again, bridging that gap between approving signs and letting people know that you are opening something new is always such a positive. It's better to have a sign that's up in an empty windowsill announcing that something's going to be there than nothing at all. And so those are things that we should be looking at.
Fair enough.
I have to add one thing.
Yes.
I apologize to all because I was actually kidding about a 2-day workshop, because I was just highlighting how complicated every little thing seems to be with city government. So that was my way of making that point.
And we took it.
And it's very important. Everything, I know the sign ordinance is very, very important, but just listening to this just makes you realize how complicated everything is when running a small town.
Or any town, I would assume. Our town is a little more unique than some. So, do we want to ask staff to put together a public meeting?
I think so. I think it would be great to have more engagement from the business community and have a workshop so that they feel like they're participating, so that they are participating in the craft of the.
And as Raphael suggested, led by the DRC?
I think that's great because they're the ones that deal with design and things like that.
Right. Mr. Clark, you okay with that?
Yep.
Mr. Brown?
So, which I'm totally okay with. One thing, though, I would want to at least lay out is the processing, because that ultimately is a council decision. That is a policy decision from your end. And how do you? I mean, if we want to punt that to this meeting, that's fine. But at least having a little bit of clarity of where this council wants to see that go would be fantastic, as we can put that into the staff report.
The processing.
Yeah,
I'm a little confused.
well, I think you hit on it earlier, and to have those standards, over-the-counter type of thing, and if they don't meet those standards, then it gets pushed to DRC. That sounds like a process to me right there. Is that not?
It is. And so that's beginning to allude to potentially changing how it's written today, which is basically all signs, everything known to man, except for Randy gets the civic signs, and I get temporary signs on a random occasion here and there. But I know it's a little tough job. But again, having that going forward at least sets the stage to say, okay, the council would like these to become more not necessarily over the counter, but reviewed by city staff and approved at a city staff level. Because again, over the counter makes you think, I'm going to quickly take a look at a piece of paper and call it a day. It very much takes an analysis to make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's. But those standards would need to be vetted and done by the DRC without any shadow of a doubt.
And I would suggest that we have, before we have this meeting, that we have several options of what those processes would look like, so everybody knows, because what you say and what each of us hear you say is going to be different.
Yeah.
No offense.
having visuals or photos of the different signs that this would meet the standard and this would
that's-
not.
yeah.
Things of that.
Because I'm
Examples are big-time illustration for the sign. So.
because banners, light pole banners, we've got a whole policy on. So it's not those banners that you're talking
It is definitely not those banners we're talking about. We're talking, typically the lighter weight material, temporary banners, A-frame signs is the same thing. Again, time, place, manner when it comes to an A-frame sign, understanding our community. If you asked me a year ago, should Solvang have A-frame signs? I'm like, yeah, of course. That would have been my answer a year ago based on just my pure planning practice and trying to help a business. A year later, I have a very much of pause, simply because it's an understanding of what drives our economy, what drives our village, what drives the people here, and trying to, again, tiptoe that line of keeping up with our brand, but at the same time allowing our businesses to grow and develop. And that's a very fine line to walk.
And I personally would be glad to help if I can, as an ex-BAR member. That was a long time ago, but still I have an idea of what they do. Well, yeah, let's go to the BAR. I think that's a great idea. Okay, no more jokes. My wife will get upset.
So the direction is to hold a workshop at the DRC level. Again, as Randy alluded to, we will be picking DRC committee members in January. You got to give them a primer meeting at least. And that's just been the practice. So February is usually the soft toss. It's the spring training meeting. So this probably wouldn't occur until sometime in early spring, just an FYI. And that's something we could actually do as a special meeting as well, because I would almost want to also include the Planning Commission as well and make it a joint meeting.
I think that's a great idea. The planning commissioners all have their own opinions, even Aaron does. So yes, I like the idea of having them get involved, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's figure this thing out and make it something that we can use, and I think we need to make a separation between the TRC and the rest of the city.
Oh, 100%. That is okay. Again, time, place, manner. So,
Time, place, manner. Okay.
And so that would be okay. But again, if that sounds like that's the direction that you want to head, that's perfectly fine. I will put on my consultant hat and not charge you $15,000 for a workshop.
It's a deal.
Can I just ask, would that be a Brown Act kind of meeting or just open?
If it's DRC, they're a Brown Act committee. If it's open, it has to be a Brown Act, I'm pretty sure.
It would be a joint, however, Chelsea.
It would still be a Brown Act meeting, but it would be a little more informal as far as allowing for public comment and discussion. But you would still notice it as a Brown Act meeting and,
Right.
Kind of like our
Have to
council
have-
goals workshop back
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
February or whenever it was.
Probably have to
Exactly.
hold it over in the court, the restaurant over there, what do you call it?
You know,
Conflicts of interest would apply to those kind of.
yeah.
Yeah.
yes,
Craft
they
house,
would.
So I stepped down from planning commission and
Yeah.
I can vote, honey.
If it helps a little bit, I would be, anti-A-frame signage personally, except with the exception of private property. Okay, private property, that's another level.
Yeah, and again, hence the walking the fine line, because and another jurisdiction I'd worked in, they ended up doing that. And it created essentially winners and losers when it came to businesses, because it was really based on where they were located. Some could do it, some could not. But ultimately, that became a business decision. So if you want certain type of frontage as a business owner, then you can go after that as business owner.
You made a perfect point that blocking public walkways was just really not acceptable with our tourism. I mean, that just doesn't work, period. But, okay, we'll discuss that when we get to that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the comment.
Thank you, and congratulations to Dave Brown and Mark and Claudia and Clark, Robert. I know I have a couple more meetings left with you, but thank you so much for bringing this to council's attention.
Okay, so let's move on to item 8C. Madam Clerk, if you'd read that into the record, please.
Discussion and possible action to provide staff direction regarding fulfillment of a potential District 3 City Council vacancy.
Staff report, please.
So we have the almost final results of the election in, and it's highly unlikely that the numbers will change significantly enough to make change the assumption that District 3 council member Brown will become the new mayor. When that happens, obviously it creates a vacancy in District 3 for a council member. So historically, we've waited until it's been, at least my understanding is we've historically waited until the county validates the election. And I got talking with Anne Marie and thought we might want to get a little bit of a head start on this. We're in the holiday period.
Right.
People's attention is not on city business for the most part, even when there isn't a holiday period. And so we'd like to make sure we cast a wide enough net that when we actually have a certified election and can bring a matter back to council, that we have at least a few candidates to select from. So there's an outline here that talks about, how it's going to be done, and if it's vacant, and we have 60 days once that election is certified to fill it, or we have to city has to announce a special election. So one of the primary things we need council to decide tonight is if there is a preference for one or the other option. Are we going to do a special election, or are we going to do an appointment? If we're going to do an appointment, and we'll get the word out, like I said, and have an opportunity for the community in District 3 residents to apply, and then ideally at the January 13th meeting, which will be the first meeting of the new year, council can appoint a replacement. So that's essentially what's before you, is to give, the decision of whether we want to do a special election. Very rough estimate of cost is something in the neighborhood of $30,000, or do an appointment process. And if you want to do the appointment process, then we can get applications out. I believe Chelsea has something to say.
Just one thing to add on the special election is that it has to be, we can't just hold it at any time we want to. It has to be at the next regularly scheduled election time. So that wouldn't be until November of next year. So it would, if you do decide to go with that option, it does mean that that seat will be vacant for some time.
Yeah, not very good. Questions of the staff report?
I think we'd all appreciate an appointment so that it's not vacant for that period of time.
Right.
And so I think I'd like to tell you, yes, let's make it known or make an announcement for applications for District 3, seeking individuals to do that. I don't know if there's a certain standard besides where they live, but
There are some.
Yeah, there's some minimum requirements, including they have to live in the district. They have to, be of voting age and eligible. But yeah, so we would they would have to meet those minimum requirements, and then if there's other criteria that we want to highlight that would make your application more favorable for the council or something, we can. But yeah, they're at a minimum they're going to have to be from District 3. And I don't want to forget public comment. I know there's not many people here, but yeah, any other questions?
It also was in the agenda that the person needs to be a registered voter,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so remember that.
Yeah. So as much as we love civic engagement from our young folks, they have to be old enough to vote, to hold
And
the
if they're old
office.
enough, be registered to vote.
Yes.
Then
Mm-hmm.
they're going to California, I think everybody is.
Yeah. Question. Let's go through a couple dates real quick. We have I believe it's the last meeting of the year, which is the first meeting in December, which I forget the date of.
The 9th. Yeah.
The 9th is when we will swear in the new council, which will be 4 of us at the time.
Yes.
And then in January, we will appoint.
You will
So we
select
need-
from the applicants.
We'll select from the applicants that have presented. So we need applications in before December.
Right, as soon as this is certified.
Well, we can take
Well,
applications.
we can
sooner
take
than that.
applications anytime.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, you
didn't know
can
that.
start taking up. That's part of why we're bringing it now, is because we could put out the word that, pending certification of the election, we're expecting there to be a vacancy, please submit your application. And that was the idea, was to give, if the council wishes to go with that option, which it sounds like some of you at least
We
are
do.
leaning that way.
Yeah.
That it would give more time for people to apply, and we wouldn't be, you wouldn't decide on an appointment until after the certification, which is why the
Right.
meeting where you would actually evaluate any applications would be the January one.
The January meeting. Do we have applications on the website today?
Not yet, but there is a sample in the council packet, so.
That sample was a one-pager. It didn't seem like that was
Couple
enough, was
pages.
it?
The last couple pages of your agenda.
It's easy for you to
I live with Dave now.
say. What?
It's sad that I made myself. Dave, I'll see you at home later.
Okay. So we have a form in here, but we need to get it up online and
Right,
make it
and we can
available.
do that once we get direction from council.
Okay. So,
And that's the deadline though is January 2024.
We'll correct that.
Okay.
And I might have missed it, but did we take public comment? I know.
we haven't yet. No, we're
Okay.
still going back and forth. Is there anybody that wants to make a public comment, Al? No. And there doesn't appear to be anybody on Zoom that wants to make a comment. It's 2 years. Yeah. Okay, back to the council then. Do we have a motion to how we're going to fill the city council vacancy?
Or is it direction?
I think it's just direction, is it?
Yeah.
Motion to use an appointment process?
Yeah, exhaust that process anyway. If we don't come to a conclusion for an appointment, we go to automatically.
We go to talk to lawyers what to do.
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Does it require a motion?
it does.
It was agendized as direction to staff, but you can certainly do a motion. There's no formal resolution that you're adopting at this point, but yeah, you can do a motion. It's as a parliamentary procedure to make the council's desire known.
Okay.
So I believe we're all in agreement that it is an appointment process that we prefer rather than an election. So I will move that we use an appointment process for replacing District 3 on the city council.
Second.
Roll call.
Excuse me. Councilmember Clark,
No.
Councilmember Claudia Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent, Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
He's been trying to say no for a couple of years. That's right. Yeah, I know.
You seconded the motion, I mean.
That doesn't matter to him. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned at, what is it, 8:40.